good to see you, etc., etc., etc. Here we are, day 19, Music Making Month continues. We're almost at the 2/3 point. It's kind of a milestone of sorts, I suppose. I hope everyone's been enjoying things, and we have a lot more for you, and tonight's a pretty cool one, I gotta say. So, look, we're gonna get down to business here. But, first things first, just want to let you guys know, anyone new to the chat, see, the guys who are regulars now are probably getting sick of me saying this, but if anyone's new, I'm just gonna repeat it. Basically, it's this. If you've got a question, put the word question in front of your question in the chat so that my eyes can kind of go to it and I can get it to Chris. And also, if you want to have your music played at the beginning of the broadcast, go ahead and send me a tweet. You can tweet our Propellerhead. It's at PropellerheadSW, like software, or Sweden. So PropellerheadSW is our handle in Twitter. Go ahead and tweet us a song and include the hashtag MMMPropSongs. And I do a search basically every day on that hashtag, MMMPropSongs. And I listen to all the songs and I pick one and I put it up. And you get the spot that day, which you saw. Here we had Third Floor was doing our song today with a song called Leaving the City Part 1. So I guess we're going to expect Part 2 from Third Floor as well coming up. So anyway, look, let's get down to business. We have a guest tonight, which is, he like dreams synth and reason wirings. His name's Chris Petti, and he is a long time. I mean, he comes from Berkeley, from Korg. He was a Line 6 guy for a long time. He's teaching at Dubspot in New York City now, and he's just an all-around very talented, very knowledgeable guy. So we thought, who better to sort of get us looking at synths in a way that maybe we're not looking at them right now than Chris, because he can look at them every which way. So, without further ado, let's bring him on here. And Chris, say hello to the internet.
Hello to the internet. Hey, Ryan, and everybody else that's out there listening. Hopefully thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But thanks for the introduction. I hope that I'm able to live up to your expectation and everybody else's expectation here. But yeah, I was asked about this a little while back, and I thought of some cool ideas as far as what might be good for doing the video here. And I've gone with the idea that I'm going to show you today how to create really abrasive wavetable bass and lead sounds, like the types of sounds that you hear in dubstep tracks or electro or drum and bass, just shifting, morphing types of just heavy, nasty kinds of sounds.
And Chris, this is something I just want to dwell on for a second. Dubstep is all the rage right now, and I, as a listener, enjoy it, but I didn't even know until somewhat recently that it was done using wavetable synthesis.
Yeah, it kind of gets this exotic sound, like almost metallic, but you hear the sounds almost shifting as well, like they're moving. And a lot of times what we think we hear is filters opening and closing. Really, in essence, is wavetables shifting and moving from position to position to create this opening or closing type of sound. So, I have the picture-in-a-picture on right now. Do you want me to keep this on, Ryan?
Well, we'll pull it off when we go to the rack, actually. It's funny because S. Foreman in the chat says, he's got the little window like James Bernard. I didn't know that James Bernard had a trademark on that window, but apparently he does with S. Foreman.
I don't even... Oh, it's Scott Foreman, longtime friend. I don't know if... anything else does this picture-in-a-picture on OS X, so that's
gotcha.
It seems to be the standard tool to do this.
Gotcha. Well, let's when we go to the rack, let's toggle it off just to get maximum reason viewage.
Okay.
Cool. So let's dive into this. So what do we got? What do we got to look at and listen to and learn?
Okay. So what I've launched here is I've launched my record template, and one of the ways that I feel working with digital audio workstations and working with Reason and Record is to really have a lot of templates and things ready to go. So I keep templates for the different styles of music that I'm going to work on, as well as different templates for the different synths and different instruments that I'm going to use inside my rack as well. So I've kind of got a whole arsenal. Because when I sit down with an idea, really, what I want to do is I want to write music. I don't want to wrestle with the technology of cabling things, and I kind of want to have things ready to go. You know, what inspires me when I sit down to write music is probably a melody or something that I'm hearing in my head. It's usually not how I'm going to connect the kick drum to the mixer this time, what effects I'm going to plug it into. So this is my starting template right here, and it's in record. And basically, just to give you a quick little overview of what it is, I have Kong in the rack, and I really, really like the step programming on the redrums. So I have the redrums piped in to control the pads on the back of Kong. And I'm just going to flip it around quickly so you can see the CV gate inputs. And I apologize for this mess. I'm going to hit the K button so that we can hide the clutter of the cables. And basically, the idea is that I have a drum beat here ready to go. I keep a couple of Dr. Octo Rexes as well so that I can add percussion loops into it, but we're not going to really deal with the drums right now. I just wanted to show you what we're looking at. So where we're going to start with this, and I will hide the picture in a picture if there's things that I can't see on the screen. So
yeah, let's go and hide it anyway, because there was a little bit of audio breakup there, so just to save on the bandwidth.
Sure. Okay. So what we're looking at is the rack, and what I'm going to do is, usually the way that I keep all of the instruments, all of these custom concoctions, is in combinator patches. So this is the way that we're going to start this particular type of sound. So I'm going to go and put a blank combinator into my rack. And now, the first device that I'm going to place into it is a 6x2 line mixer. So the idea with the combinator is that you can really have very finished sounds using the combinator. I really don't use the individual instruments aside from the Dr. Octorex or the Kong Drum Designer, outside the rack. So we can
outside a combinator, you mean?
I'm sorry?
You said outside of a combinator, you don't use these?
I don't put them in a combinator.
Uh-huh.
I leave them, by themselves in the original state.
Gotcha.
In the rack. So as you can see here, they're not contained in combinator patches. So, but for all the synths and all of the sample-based stuff that I'm going to do, I keep it inside combinator patches so that I have all the effects routings. And one of my favorite things to do is mimic the structures of a lot of the very popular VST and hardware synthesizers that have gone, or still in vain to be used in current electronic music or even older electronic music from years gone by. So back to what I was doing here. So I put a 6x2 line mixer into my combinator. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an instance of Thor. So we're going to be doing all of this wavetable stuff inside Thor. But one of my favorite tricks, and one of the things that I notice a lot of times when I listen to synthesizers inside hardware and some of the bigger VST plugins, is a very, very wide stereo image, kind of this signal that just grabs you on the left and the right and sounds very, very big. If I strike the key on Thor right now on this combinator so we can hear it, we'll hear the initial saw sound from the analog oscillator. So it's very dead center, very up the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly make a routing setup here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an audio merger splitter, Spider audio merger splitter, and I'm going to hold shift while I create this so that there's no accidental patching. And I'm just going to flip the rack around for a quick second, and I'm going to take Thor and plug Thor into the first split, into the split over here. And I'm going to take the first split and plug it into the left audio input on channel 1 of the line mixer. And I'm just going to flip around one more time, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a digital delay line, a DDL1, and I'm going to hold shift while I do this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the second split on the merger splitter and plug it into the input on the digital delay line.
And just for people to know, so holding the shift down does what?
It disables the auto routing. Sometimes it may connect it accidentally. What I was afraid of here was that it might actually connect the output of Thor to the digital delay line before the splitter, which is not what I want to do. So by holding shift, it disables the auto routing. So now I'm going to connect the output of the digital delay line to the right channel. The second channel on the audio mixer. So now, just a couple of settings that I want to make on the front panel of the DDL1. I'm going to set my delay to about 8 milliseconds. And I'm going to turn my feedback all the way down. And I'm going to put my wet-dry amount probably somewhere around 50%. And what I'm going to do on the mixer is I'm going to pan my signals hard left and hard right for channel 1 and channel 2. So now what I've done is I've just created this much wider stereo image of what the actual synth sound is. So hopefully everybody out there can hear that.
I do believe through the power of Skype technology we have a glorious mono Haas effect.
Okay.
But edit for TV says bummer. But yeah, The James says mono for the win. The principle is correct, so I hope you're all taking notes. And if you want to hear this effect on its own, James Bernard has a tip. One of his 52 Reason Record tips all about the Haas effect that will show you this example in stereo. But do carry on, Chris.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to expose the programmer for Thor now. And this is an initialized patch. I basically have it set up so that in my preferences, in case you don't know where that's set up, the general page, I can actually specify that it doesn't load default sounds into the devices, and this is kind of the way I like to start. So in this Thor, it's starting with the initialized analog oscillator saw sound. So I'm going to make some changes here. I'm going to bring my amplifier envelope up all the way so that we hear a steady gate on message, and I'm going to take my filter envelope and mimic the same thing. Turn my filter envelope amount to filter cutoff down on filter 1. And now if I strike the key, we're going to hear a louder signal that's steady. Okay, so here's where the magic of Thor really begins. Thor is kind of like a Swiss Army knife for synthesizers, as far as I'm concerned. It does a lot of things that many other synthesizers don't do and can't do. It's a hybrid structure, and it allows for multiple different types of synthesis to be combined together. So if you haven't really touched beyond the analog oscillator on Thor, you're kind of missing out on a lot of the amazing things that it can do. So for this lesson, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the wavetable oscillator to create these dirty, abrasive sounds. So for those of you that are not familiar with wavetable synthesis, it was actually introduced in the early 80s from a German company called PPG that made a synthesizer called the Wave, which was regarded as the first commercial wavetable synthesizer. And the concept is this. It's a digital synthesizer, how it's generating the actual synthesis method. But what it is think of it as a strip of similar sounding samples that we have a position control to actually blend between the samples. So if I strike the key on my keyboard, we're going to hear a sine wave in the far left position, and I'm going to sweep, and we'll eventually make it to a saw sound. So think of it as a collection of many similar sounding samples. Now we have an X fade button next to the position knob on the wavetable oscillator, and what this does when we turn it off is that we actually hear pretty identifiable steps between the little waveforms on the wavetable. So I'm going to put the smooth crossfade back on, and this is the basic idea with wavetable synthesis. It's usually using a combination of subtractive elements also, and maybe some other things like FM or AM, but we're going to keep this pretty basic today as far as what we're doing. So I'm going to select a different wavetable than the basic analog, and if I click on the wavetable, you'll see that it brings down a list, and there are actually some of the original PPG wavetables included in Thor, which I have no idea how they wound up there, but bravo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this Mixed Waves 1 wavetable. And this is a little bit more abrasive. This is a little bit nastier than the basic analog. So if I strike the key and move the position, so just to hear what that sounds like with the smooth crossfade off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the position knob again now, and we're going to hear even steps with this. But I really think part of the magic with these types of sounds is having the smooth crossfade option on, so that we can smoothly morph between one sound and another on the wavetable. So the magic with this is actually moving these wavetable positions. So we have a host of different controls inside Thor to be able to do this with. And by the controls, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about the envelope generators. So we have 4 envelopes inside Thor that could do this, and we also have 2 LFOs if we wanted cyclic repeating patterns of the wavetable movement. So I can do this from the matrix here on the bottom portion of Thor, and it's as simple as going to, let's say, modulation envelope and routing it to oscillator 1 position and turning up the amount. Then what we'll do is we'll adjust our attack time on the mod envelope, and we should hear a movement of the sound sweeping through the wavetable. So this is cool and all, and we can do it here from Thor, but one of the things that I like to do is I actually like to have certain controls on the top level of my combinator patch. So I'm just going to quickly jump up to the Show Programmer screen, and I'm going to go to Thor, and for rotary 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign this to position 1 for oscillator 1. Sorry, position for oscillator 1. Actually, it's called oscillator 1 mod in Record 1.5 and Reason 5. So now what I can do is if I disengage my modulation envelope here, or actually I can leave it running, as I move the rotary on the top of the combinator, it actually sweeps through the wavetable. And what's cool about this, having it routed this way, is that I can actually see the position knob moving on the front panel of the wavetable oscillator if I do it.
Luke, I am your father. Sorry, someone had to do the Star Wars reference. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
This is actually one of my favorite things about routing things to the combinator, because you actually see the you see the synthesizer moving. It's like it's almost thinking on its own. So all 4 of these rotaries on the back of the combinator actually have CV inputs. So what that means is that I can send a control source from any other synthesizer that allows for CV output, which all of them do, into any of the rotaries. So hang with me for a second while we do this. This may seem a little bit complex to do this, but it'll make total sense as far as what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another instance of Thor inside this combinator patch. And I'm going to hold Shift while I do it so that it doesn't connect anything. So I now have another instance of Thor, and if I flip it around, you'll see that none of the audio outputs are connected here. And that's perfect because that's not what I want to do with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap this Thor for all of its modulation capabilities. So I'm going to call this mod sources. And I'm kind of neurotic about the naming of stuff, so as I go along, I may just stop for a second, just quickly name things just so I can keep track of what's going on. So I'm going to expose the guts of this Thor with the programmer, and I'm going to disengage the oscillators and the envelopes because I won't be using any sound out of this. So it's very simple. What I want to do here is I want to do the same thing like what I did with this instance of Thor where I did the internal routing. I'm just going to disable this, this mapping that I did. And what I'm going to do is I want to send the mod envelope here to control rotary 1 on the combinator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use source of mod envelope. And if I take a look at the back of Thor, I have 4 CV outputs that are assignable to go into what to be whatever I want them to be. So it's very simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the destination here for Thor, and I'm going to send it to CV output 1. And I'm going to turn it up to 100%. Now I'm going to flip this Thor around again, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take CV1 and connect it to rotary 1. So then this is going to control how this knob moves. So again, I'm going to put an attack here, and now if I strike the key, we actually see the wavetable moving on its own. Hope this makes sense. So continuing further with this, I'm going to add a second wavetable into the mixture. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this wavetable called Strong Harmonics, and I'm going to send it through filter 1. Just as a little bit of note of history with these early wavetable synthesizers. Wavetable synthesis is, the waveforms are regarded as very, very harsh sounding, very digital, almost brittle. And I think that the term dodgy has been used to describe the actual wavetables that are inside Thor, which emulate a lot of the PPG stuff. And the wavetables were actually 8-bit in the PPG. So the magic trick with this that PPG did with the synthesizer was ran it through actual analog filters. So I'm using this 24 decibel type 2 low pass ladder filter to kind of, I'll use it to soften up the sound a little bit, but we have a lot more options that we can do inside Thor than we could do inside the original wavetable PPG. So I've engaged the second oscillator, which is using a different wavetable. Okay, so
This is approaching the face melting point.
is it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, in a good way.
Oh, good. Okay. So I've got this second position knob for the second wavetable oscillator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow along the same thing that I did here, and I'm going to just quickly rename this rotary so that we know what we're looking at. Wavetable 1 position, and that's what happens when I hold down Shift and hit P. So.
Let me ask you a question while you're doing this that came in here on the chat. Funkmaster Buzz says, is there any way of using the Malmstrom's grain table through Thor's CV?
Well, Thor will not distinguish between audio and control voltage, so we can actually send an audio input into the back of Thor and then send it back out as a CV output. So we can convert any incoming audio to control voltage.
Very interesting.
One thing that we can do, we can send a drum beat through a Thor to convert the signal to CV and then back out to control maybe the pitch of a synthesizer. There's a lot of different options that we have. This is one of the things about Thor that I keep coming back to. I spend a lot of time looking at a lot of the VST and audio unit plugins and messing with them for a little bit, but it's this ability to not have differentiation between audio and control voltage signal that really keeps sending me back to Thor, and also the fact that I can have a million of them if I want inside the rack and just tap them like I'm doing right now for all of the control signals. So I hope that answers the question.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll say yes on behalf.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I want to make the second wavetable move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to take filter envelope and I'm going to send it to CV2. And really, I want to have separation of these wavetables. I could gang them up so that one envelope is controlling the position movement for all of them. But I want to have different things going on. So remember, when I was actually holding down the key and striking, I was moving the position backwards here on this wavetable oscillator on the second one. And that's kind of what I want to do here. So I can actually send the CV out in negative amounts on Thor so that it's going in an inverse direction. So if I put an attack here on this. And let's just name this quickly before I wavetable position 2.
You are good with the naming.
Well, I'm doing a lot here, and I feel like I lose track of things if I stop for even a second. So I need to keep track of where I'm going and what I'm doing. So I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to take CV2 and plug it into rotary 2 here so that it's controlling the position for wavetable 2. So now, if I plugged everything correctly and I'm using the right CV amount and negative polarity, this position knob should go backwards now. And let's actually turn the amount up here, and I didn't actually route it yet. So let's go to rotary 2 and route it to oscillator 2, mod. And now, let's actually start the wavetable position up higher. Okay, so let's add one more oscillator to the mixture here. So I'm going to take another wavetable. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I think, ramp harmonics or synced ramp is what I want to use. So this one's even more digital sounding, more abrasive sounding, and let's hear what this sounds like in the mixture. Okay, so I only want that one to move a little bit. So again, I'm going to follow suit here, and I'm going to say rotary 3 is going to control oscillator 3 mod. And this is the position control again, and I'm just going to copy and paste and set this to 3. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my amp envelope on this Thor and turn the amount up and send this to, as you might have guessed, CV3. This is really one of the beautiful things about Thor, that it's so flexible and so modular that I can really just take elements and pieces of it that I might want, rather than have to, use the whole synth in its entirety, and have this flexibility. So let me take CV3 and plug it into rotary 3 and turn the amount up here. And I'm going to put a little bit of attack here on this. Now that's doing it a little bit way too much, so I'm going to back off some of the amount of amp to CV3. Okay, so the sound is really starting to take shape here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple other elements into this. I'm going to add a second filter into the mixture here. I'm going to use a state variable, and I'm going to use the bandpass filter for this. And I'm going to bring the resonance up a little bit, filter frequency down, make sure that I have the routing going on here too. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send oscillator 1, 2, 3 all through filter 2. So the audible effect this has now. Okay, so the sound is really starting to take shape, and that actually leads us to another point here. There's a shaper inside Thor, and shapers are actually really, really powerful distortion synthesis algorithms. And we see that we can route filter 1 through the shaper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage the shaper, and I'm going to set it to a hard clip. Now remember, we're going to hear the signal going through the bandpass filter without going through the shaper, and then we're going to hear it mixed with the low-pass filter going through the shaper. Okay. So,
I want you to know, by the way, Chris, that I believe the chat room has nicknamed this the Rap Thor in anticipation of the coming apocalypse on Saturday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the Rapture, you know? It's kind of... This is the soundtrack we'll be listening to on Saturday.
Okay, so I'm going to add one more filter into the mixture here, and with these dubstep and these electro tracks, we do hear a wobble in the sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the state variable filter here, and I think I'm going to utilize the bandpass again on the whole mixture of things, and we might have to crank the drive a little bit on this to get a louder signal. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to connect LFO1. First, I'm going to set the key sync and the tempo sync to control filter frequency cutoff here on the third filter. So I'm simply going to go to LFO1 and set the destination to filter 3 frequency, just like you might have thought. So if I turn this up and I start messing with the rate, we get the classic wobble sound that we hear inside the dubstep electro tracks. So a couple of effects processors are going to be very beneficial and very handy in helping the sound along as well. So I really am a big fan of the Scream for Distortion unit. I haven't really found anything as far as a plugin or anything that exists inside any other software platform that's as versatile as a Scream for Distortion. It's not just a distortion unit. It has 11 or I think 13 different algorithms of different ways that it can mangle and fatten and widen sound. So the first one that I'm going to use here is one of my favorite tricks with this is the tape saturator. And basically what the tape saturator is going to do, if I'm going to back off just make some settings here, I'm going to back off my damage control to about 36, and I'm going to bring my master level up to about 100 here. And I'm going to use this position one, this P1 parameter. And basically what this will do, it says that it's adjustment to speed. We can see the two parameters that are controlled here by the P1 and P2. This is actually going to shave a little bit off the top end, and to me it almost sounds a little bit fatter, a little bit thicker at the bottom too when I do this. And just so that we're not hearing the constant wobble, I'm going to show you one other thing with the routing inside Thor that's very cool. I have a scale function on each of the modulation destination sources, and on the last set of them I have 2 scale destinations. So what I want to do is I want to make it so that the mod wheel controls the actual amount of wobble going on here. So I'm going to set the scale to my performance controller of mod wheel. I'm going to set this to 100%, and now if I strike the key, we're going to hear the sound without the wobble. And if I turn the mod wheel up, okay, so we're almost done here with this. I'm going to create one more screen for distortion in the signal path here. And one of the favorite kind of in vogue tricks to do right now. Remember, I told you that the wavetables were, what is described as dodgy almost, which is like 8-bit samples. We're actually going to lo-fi the signal even further and create this dirtier sound out of the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off my damage control again to about 36 or 38, somewhere in the range there, and I'm going to turn my master level up to almost 100. If I can get it there, the shift button will take me there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the digital algorithm on screen. And the digital allows me to control bit resolution and sample rate. So we know that CD fidelity is 16-bit 44.1. We don't actually see an indication of what the actual numbers are doing here, aside from the values for the parameter 1 and parameter 2. But we know that if we use the P2 knob, it's actually controlling the sample rate and lo-fiing it. So as I hold down the key here, so this is pretty much like a starting point template kind of thing that I would use for a wavetable-based sound like this. Obviously, I'd make adjustments to the LFO1 rate and maybe even the waveform to do different tricks and different things. If I go here, I just set this to a saw wave, and it makes for this fast plucking kind of sound because it's pulling the filter frequency down. So that's pretty much it, aside for the fact that I might want to put a distortion unit in chain here also, just to add even more dirt and more bite to the whole thing. It really comes down to how you process these sounds. And I know that we used a wave shaper inside Thor here already, but we can actually build external wave shapers too to process the sound even further. My good friend James Bernard actually built a multi-band wave shaper that's a free refill from the Propeller Head site that I haven't seen anything like this in any other software platform, and is actually pretty cool to process different bands individually. So I just added a distortion unit here, and we'll just check it out to hear how it sounds with a little bit of overdrive. Again, I'm going to back off my damage control again here, and I'm going to set my master level to around 100, and let's just hear this with different
before we play it, Chris, let's just pull back on the main level again. It's kind of creeping up into the automatic gain control point where it starts getting crazy.
Okay. So I will back off here a little bit. How does this sound? My channel is way overloading. Okay, so that's pretty much where I would go with this. I can adjust set mode. One thing that I might want to do here is just to make the synth patch a little bit more playable, because I think that not using the combinator controls at the top of the combinator is kind of a shame. Sometimes I see patches that are not actually live and active, and I think part of the fun with these patches is actually having real-time controls up at the top to completely morph, twist, and shape the sound. So very simple mapping that I'm going to make here with Rotary 4 on this Thor is I'm going to set it to LFO1 rate. So that way I can actually control the rate of the wobble that this is doing. And finally I will rename this. And now I can save the patch and call it wavetable template. And again, there I go with the Shift P.
It's good to see you now and again.
Yeah.
You just make a little cameo.
Here I am. So that's pretty much the little mini lesson that I've got here for you today, as far as kind of understanding wavetable and taking advantage of this with Thor. I mean, one of the advantages that Thor has over some of the other wavetable synthesizers is that we don't necessarily have to use just all wavetable oscillators. We can actually mix it with different oscillator types and create some very cool hybrid concoctions of FM and multi-oscillator and analog synthesizer tones with the wavetable.
Right. What's cool for me to see about this is, I mean, maybe it's an obvious thing, but it's not in other ways. And that is that when you start using one of these oscillators that might be out of your comfort zone, maybe you're not used to using a wavetable oscillator, so you'll pull one up and you'll be like, I'll try it out, and maybe it makes a cool noise. But the thought that it's like, okay, well, that's cool, and I'm going to layer one on top of that, and I'm going to layer one on top of that. It's not just stepping outside your comfort zone in one oscillator. Double them up, triple them up, and really kind of get, explore the full extent of this new sound that you're exploring. So I think that's kind of cool. There was a question that came in, and it's probably one that many of us are wondering, which was, how do you learn this? I mean, experimentation, yes, but how did you learn to be sort of as much of a whiz as you are with pulling out these routings?
Okay, I don't sleep.
You heard it here first, kids.
This took a long time learning it. I grew up playing instruments. I played guitar since I was about 6 years old. I played saxophone for a while. I played piano and violin a little bit along the way too. But I went to Berkeley wanting to do performance on guitar, jazz performance. And I saw all of this, and I was absolutely fascinated by it. Really, it was not in software at that point in time. It was in hardware, and it was right at the cusp. In fact, Rebirth had just come out a year or two prior to me actually getting into all of this. And it took, it's a lot of experimentation. I read a tremendous amount on this. You can actually look it up on Wikipedia as far as the explanation history of wavetable synthesis. There's a number of different techniques. I learned a lot at Berkeley as far as the actual science side of all of this and what's actually going on behind the scenes. But it was really a whirlwind of information all at once. And, it's taken me, having worked in the industry for a number of years and now teaching it, to really get a firm handle on a lot of this stuff. And practice does make perfect. And sitting and programming these sounds and just experimenting and trying different things out.
You know what? I've seen you teach, and I can speak from that firsthand experience that you research and you read, and in this world where we sort of try and get to the sound by skipping the manual, or maybe we read the quick start guide at most, or we'll read the YouTube description and count that as reading. You do your research, you do your homework, and there's probably a lot that you learn in that. By, like you said, you learn how wavetable synthesis works, and then you apply that knowledge to Thor rather than just trying to learn how Thor works on its own.
Oh yeah, no, I'm looking at, when I study these different synthesis types, I look at all the different types of designs that have been out, in hardware, and then, what's going on in software. A lot of, the wavetable synthesis is a very, very powerful form of synthesis because of the fact that it allows for this morphing of the actual, waves on the table. But yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time reading and experimenting with this stuff, and I'm learning new stuff all the time. I mean, to say that I know everything about all of this is really far-fetched. To say that, I love learning with this, and every time I turn it on, I feel like I'm learning something new. So I think the day that stops happening may be the day that I stop with all of this. And
right. A question from Chromacoy wants to know, do you have any specific tips that you could give us to help us better understand the modulation matrix?
Yes, I do. Basically, in a synthesizer structure, you have generators and you have control signals. So if we look, everybody's looking at Thor right now as far as what's going on. So over on the left-hand side here, I have my generators. My filters are modifiers, and then I have my control signals. The control signals are the envelopes and the LFOs. Think of the envelopes, even though the mod envelope and the global envelope do loop, think of them as one-shot type controls, that they're going to make a change and send out the signal with an attack, decay, sustain, release message once. when you strike the key, and it's going to re-trigger each time. For LFO, think of it as a repeating cyclic control that repeats indefinitely until your finger is removed from the key. One of the early applications of LFO and popular usage for it is to actually do the simulation of vibrato. So a lot of times it's routed to control pitch, and the mod wheel makes the pitch wobble, in a small amount, but at a fast rate, so that it sounds like a vibrato. There's all different types of resources on the internet, too, as far as the building blocks of synthesis. And, with the filters and the envelopes, regardless of what type of structure that you look at, regardless of what type of third-party synth or hardware synth or anything inside Reason and Record, it's all the same set of controls. There's different LFOs, and, things may be fancier as far as the way that they're connected and allow for crossfading between different control sources, but it's all starting with these basic control sources. The other control sources, the step sequencer also, but for the more basic understanding of this, I would look at envelopes, filter envelopes, LFOs, and just experiment. Try plugging them into different things. If I go here and I engage LFO2, one thing I might want to do here is make for a volume kind of chop sound with this. So I think a lot of this is very much conceptualizing when you're working with a modular synthesizer. But I used, when I learned all of this, I was playing around with hardwired synths and having happy accidents happen by turning knobs and pushing buttons, and it helped me learn quite a bit. But at this point that I've gotten to, I really like to kind of conceptualize as far as what I'm going to do with this. So a little bit of thinking goes into this, but it's really kind of very logical thinking when you think about how you're shaping and building the sound. So the idea here is that I want to make the volume chop on and off. I want to make for a gated kind of thing that's going to make the sound break up very quickly. So LFO2, I would want to control the gain, which is the volume on the amplifier. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go here to the destinations, and I'm going to go to amp and set it to gain. Now I'm going to turn this to 100%, and I'm going to go to LFO2, set it to key sync, and I'm going to set it to a square wave, which is basically an on-off message. It's basically full value and no value is what the actual picture shows us. And I'm going to set my rate to 16th notes. And now if I strike the key, I hear it feeding back on your own big time.
You hear it feeding back on my side? What?
No, it's gone now.
Oh, okay, good.
It sounded like it was coming back at me.
Gotcha.
So I hope that helps you along the way a little bit. But one of the beautiful things about Reason and Record is the fact that it is a completely modular, flexible environment. So you can literally try out anything that you want to try out. The limitation with a hardwired system where they've only given you certain connections to connect is that you can't try out a lot of these things that you might want to try out.
Gotcha. There's a question from Jacob Callahan who wants to know, do you use 66 when programming? And this came up earlier in, it might have been from Adam Fielding, I'm not quite sure, but they said that 66 is the magical number in the mod matrix. Does that mean anything to you, or is that just Adam pulling out a random factoid?
I don't really go on what the numbers are set to on the mod matrix. Certain things, like for doing pulse width modulation, I usually don't go above 40. But you have to use your ears for this, and what sounds right to you is ultimately what you have to use. I mean, if I'm using a scaling type value here, like what I did with the mod wheel, obviously this is something that's generally going to be set to 100, to engage different things. Like if I wanted to switch this from mod wheel to, say, button, basically, it's not going to do the wobble until the button is engaged here. Let me turn the routing down on that. I'll set this to button 2 also, so we can have a little bit more to play with here. So right now, nothing is happening to the sound. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that there is any type of magic number value to set things to. You may see some parameters set, maybe 66 is the magic number for, one particular person's, scheme for programming, but it doesn't really seem to hold any major amount of value, I think.
Gotcha.
It's having a, generic setting to slap on it. You got to use your ears at the end of the day. And The other thing too that I will say with it is that it's not about necessarily using extreme values, as I say this with everything set to 100 inside my mod matrix. It's about finding these sweet spots, and sometimes smaller amounts of modulation, smaller amounts of movement actually yield a more drastic, better result than just having something that's all out or nothing.
Gotcha. Okay. Another question here, just a personal question from Jacob Callan. He wants to know, do you make dubstep music personally?
I do. I actually, when I got into all of this, the 4 on the Floor music was the first stuff that I'd heard, and I was, this was when everything was being pressed on vinyl. It was years ago, and this was kind of like the gateway into all of it. But I got really, really, really into the jungle and then into the drum and bass music, and I was fascinated in awe of all of the really heavy abrasive sounds. And James Bernard is actually who turned me on to the dubstep first, so if he's still listening out there.
Oh, he's out there.
But it's kind of like there's a lot reminiscent of it to the drum and bass, but it's one of these forms of music that the drum and bass was done primarily with samplers and was done with a lot of hardware, and we're all I like this saying that music is dictated by technology, because dubstep and electro are two of these musical styles that rely heavily on tempo synced LFOs and tempo synced envelopes to create an exactness with the shifting of these wavetables and opening and closing of filters and movement of filter frequencies from LFOs. And it simply wouldn't be possible to do these styles of music in a hardware system as easily as it would be able to do inside the software. I guess modern hardware that does have more tempo sync options would be possible to do this, but we're victims of the technology, and
right.
It tells us what kind of music to make.
Awesome. Well, so there's a question from DJ Dark 2011, who, not to be confused with DJ Dark 2010, totally different guy.
Okay.
But DJ Dark 2011 wants to know, is there a way that this patch is somehow shareable with people? People would love to kind of play with this patch. Is there some mechanism to do that?
Yes, there is a mechanism to do that. There's a couple of different mechanisms. As Ryan had said, I left the MI industry a little bit ago. I teach down at Dubspot on 14th Street in New York City, and I am in the process of helping get a section on the website where we're going to be offering patches and downloads and these types of things. I don't know if that's probably not the best answer, because that's not an immediate thing. I'll tell you what, if you give Ryan your email address, I would be more than happy to send this along to you. I'll
do this, because rather than getting flooded with email or vice versa, why don't we say that if you share the patch with me, I will post the patch in our user forum, and people can go there, propellerheads.se/forum, and look for the user forum. It will be there. If you're a registered user, it'll be in the user forum. So we'll call it one of the perks of registration.
Yeah, there you go.
Ed for TV says, crap, a few viewers are now registering. Well, that's not a bad thing, and more people in our forum. That's great. Okay, well, awesome. Listen, Chris, thank you so much. This has been awesome, and it's a whole I started watching James Bernard's Synth School videos and started realizing that I really should be doing more with Thor than just browsing presets and using the analog oscillator, which is kind of what I'd been doing with Thor, right? I'm a subtractor guy. It's like I stopped playing video games when they went 3D because I liked the 2D side-scrollers, and I was happy with subtractor. Like, I don't need a lot of technological advancement. But then I saw Synth School, and I thought, wow, I really should get into this stuff. And seeing this tonight, all the more. There's so much depth to these sounds, and they're, it's right there. You've walked us through how to just kick ass with it, so it's really cool. I really appreciate it myself, and certainly everybody in the chat has been loving it too.
Well, I'm glad that everybody is happy, and that I showed you something new that you haven't seen before, that you hadn't really thought about.
Well, you could show me Maelstrom, it would be new to me. No, I'm kidding. But, okay, well, listen, thanks so much, and we will we will be seeing you again, I'm sure. You are one of our regular faves. So thanks, Chris. Have a good night.
And thank you, everybody, and see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
So that's it for us. So I will see everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we have the Freemasons. James Wiltshire from the Freemasons is going to be doing a masterclass of sorts with us, where we're going to be taking a look at his Reason Record projects and kind of seeing how he does some of the sounds that he does. So definitely tune in for that. It's going to be awesome. It is 1 hour earlier tomorrow, so whatever time it is in your part of the world, just subtract an hour from when you tuned in for this. So if you're in Europe, it's not at 9, it's at 8. If you're in the UK, it's at 7. And do the math. I'm going to do the math badly. 2 p.m. on the East Coast, 11 a.m. on the West Coast. So that does it for us tonight. Make sure you're emailing us, or not emailing us, tweeting us your prop songs. It's hashtag MMM prop songs, and you send them over to us, and I'll be playing them every night. And otherwise, I'll see you guys soon. See you tomorrow night.